Welcome back to the Marketing Mindset. It's our time. Every Wednesday we do Marketing Mindset. And the purpose of the Marketing Mindset is to talk about trends that are happening in the marketing world that may be interesting to you. We obviously are looking for feedback on different topics that we can cover. Today's topic is a fun one. It's about storytelling, telling a great story. But I want to recap some of the past topics that we've covered. We covered marketing tools. We covered the perfect marketing brief and how to create the perfect marketing brief. There's even a guide that you can find at AgencySparks if you go to the blog archives. There's a measurement topic that we covered. We covered the agency and client relationship, creativity and inspiration, building great teams, empathy in marketing, brand, voice, and tone, why big brands are choosing small agencies. Simplicity was last week's topic, and we're going to talk a little bit about simplicity during today's talk about telling a story. As a reminder, you can always go to youtube.com/AgencySparks and see past marketing mindset videos. And also we're posting these on AgencySparks.com. So today's topic is about telling stories and how powerful storytelling can be. Obviously, storytelling can help you create certain emotions and experiences. It helps you learn and educate. You think about when you tell a bedtime story to your children or you watch a TED Talk, the stories are kind of meant to expand your knowledge. And then also stories can have a powerful influence on the way we think about things, and they can often modify our behavior. So they've been around since the beginning of time. Obviously, oral storytelling, paintings, writings continue to pervade throughout our everyday lives, but they've been around since the beginning of history. Stories can help make your brand unique. They can help breathe life into your brand, and it's an easy way to show your brand's values and help make you more relatable to customers. So a lot of the statistics that we're going to talk about today and that we also talked about in our most recent blog post came from a survey that was conducted by OneSpot and also Marketing Insider Group. And one of the first stats that I'll share is that stories are 22 times more memorable than just sharing facts. And that makes sense. If you think about it, you remember your favorite class in grade school. You don't remember it because of the story, because of the subject, but you remember it because of the stories and the experiences that maybe that great teacher told. And they either assisted you or distracted from your learning. You think about a funeral. When somebody gets up at a funeral, nobody just shares the facts about a person's life. They share the stories and the experience of the person that you're honoring. So, how do you tell a great story? It's really good to speak from what you know and what you're familiar with, but if you picture a party where one person solely talks about himself the entire time, nobody wants to be that guy. And if you're that guy, maybe take a step back and reevaluate your social skills a little. People are drawn into your story when you really involve them and make it about them. And so that's why a lot of great books and movies where we see ourselves as the main character really captivate us and have an emotional connection with us. So make your stories about your audience, and one of the first things you have to do to make it about them is really understanding who the audience is. And the key to storytelling is really going into, we'll go into that a little bit more for the rest of this conversation. So there are 5 key tips to get to know your audience better and to really cater to them. And I'm going to go through the 5 tips in a little more detail. First thing is you got to segment your audience. Secondly, you've got to relate to them. Third, you need to speak honestly with them. Fourth, you've got to simplify. And we talked about that a lot in the last Marketing Mindset as well as the blog. And then the 5th is you want to invoke some wonder in the audience. And we'll talk a little bit about each of those. So from a segmentation standpoint, through analytical data and listening and observation, knowing your audience behaviors, their likes, their dislikes, their passions, their activities is really important. From that, you ought to create some specific personas. And part of that is kind of knowing these personas is really sharing and the angle that our brand story, kind of angling it towards those stories. Customers are all different. Some prioritize entertainment, others information. Some want to be inspired. Overall, something all customers want is relevant quality content that's personalized. So first thing is obviously getting to know them really well. Second, relating to consumers or customers. Instead of just pitching a sale, you need to tell a story to a friend. Tell a story by tapping into life experiences that all humans share, like families, relationships, triumphs, journeys. That same study that I mentioned before, One Spot, revealed that 92% of consumers prefer an ad that feels like a story. So by using language that speaks to them and highlighting the consumer struggle in your brand story, it makes it more consumer-centric instead of brand-centric. We think Coca-Cola does a pretty good job of this with their Taste the Feeling anthem ad. It shows groups coming together and feeling happy. And yes, the Coca-Cola is present, but it's not the center of attention. The next step is honesty. We need to, consumers need to trust, have loyalty in the brand and trust in the brand, and consumers see right through lies and insincerity. Honesty comes from the ability of being a little bit vulnerable. So it's good to open up your brand and share some of the failures and the struggles and the emotional turmoil and the strength of your brand to the consumer. The more the brand opens up, it becomes more credible to the consumer and more of a bond is formed. So that honesty is a key part of this. John Stapleton, who's the co-founder of the New Covent Garden Soup Company, said you have to tell the truth and then spin the story for marketing purposes. Obviously, you need to start with a good product, but success of many brands is linked to the emotion and the story that you tell with it. A strong story based in reality will bring your message and values to life in a way that consumers can really believe in it. So the next step is simplifying your content, and you can stand out with simplicity. Again, we wrote a lot about this last week and talked about it in last week's marketing mindset. But when's the last time you annotated an article and annotated every single point in the article? 79% of readers skim the content. So create skimmable, digestible content that's written in a really clear and expressive manner. And you can do this by constantly reworking the content. You don't want to just use the first draft. You want to continuously rework it. And also using really visual content to tell stories, it's easier to get people hooked and bring them into the content. So, for example, infographics tend to be shared 3 times more than other types of visual content. And then the last thing we talked about was invoke wonder, make the ordinary extraordinary. Disney is a brand that does an exceptional job of invoking wonder in their consumers. I think their tagline is even where everyone is a kid. So don't make the story really predictable, make it relatable, make it easy. Never tell the same story twice, use different variations. Keep the audience on their toes, never giving them the actual answer, but making them kind of work for it. There's a writer, Andrew Stanton from Pixar, that advises giving them 2 + 2, not 4. And that keeps the audience invested if they have to think about the process through the story. One of my favorite songs, one of the lyrics of the song is, "My whole Saturday and Sunday too." That's a much more poetic and wondrous way than saying last weekend, right? My whole Saturday and Sunday too. One other thing to note with this whole conversation about storytelling is that we've found that the brain reacts in unique ways to storytelling. Storytelling can even evoke chemical reactions in our brain that helps us remember and have emotional responses to them. So there's an expert, David Phillips, who had kind of 3 things chemically that happen in the brain when here's the story. Their dopamine levels rise, their oxytocin levels rise, and their endorphins increase as well. I'm going to talk quickly about each of those 3 chemicals. Dopamine is the hormone that increases the person's focus and motivation and memory. And when a story is really emotionally engaging, then the audience member's personal experience is brought in and their dopamine levels rise. And this leads to a consumer remembering a brand's story as well as the emotional feeling that was associated with it. There's the old saying that we will never remember what somebody said, but we will always remember how they made us feel. And that's definitely associated with the dopamine level. Oxytocin leads to forming bonds and trust with others, and that's why it's so important. And the more honest a brand is, the more trustworthy it tends to be, and then the higher the brand loyalty and following. And then the last one is endorphins. Those of us who have been running for many years know that the runner's high kicks in when the endorphins kick in your brain. And that invokes a sense of wonder when the endorphins are released, and it ultimately associates with the feeling of happiness. And you want that to be associated with your brand if you're telling a great story. So hopefully this helps you understand some of the tips to really telling a great story. Go to AgencySparks.com/blog archives and look for the blog post that's associated with this. We even linked to a previous presentation that we delivered about storytelling. If there's anything we missed, please let us know. If there's a topic that we should be covering, please let us know. And of course, again, go to youtube.com/AgencySparks or AgencySparks.com/blog archives, and you can see more there. Look forward to seeing you next week.